We're finally at the episode in this series where we can look at the scanned images. Before we do that though, let's just take a recap of the 3 different tempos that we were using to agitate. 1, 2, and 3. All the negatives were scanned by Take It Easy Lab, and a consistent approach was used in editing for the final results that you see here. So let's dive right into roll 1. So the negatives for roll 1 looked pretty normal, and I mentioned that in episode 1. There were 4 images on the roll that were quite fogged. Now these were the last 4 frames, I believe, of the roll that I shot. And just to explain, this camera will unwind the entire roll and then start shooting in reverse. These 4 fogged images will be at the very start of the film, and therefore they were in the centre of the spool when I was developing. This to me suggests there was some unevenness in the agitation, even though that tempo was relatively slow and I was being quite consistent in how I was agitating, so very surprising result there. I particularly wanted to show you this image here. All of the images on the negatives looked fairly normal, but this one we can really start to see some surges and colour shifts in the final image. I really like the look, but I was really surprised to see that based on the negatives. Overall, I was really pleased with this roll of film. I'd like to show you 2 of my favourites. This first one of the daffodil. Now this daffodil was backlit, but I feel like that look was emphasised by perhaps some of the surges, some of the colour shifts. And then the second one of the feather next to the double yellow lines, I liked how the almost light leak distortion is perpendicular to the leading lines that I used and cuts straight across where the feather is. This is what experimental film photographers love to find. So this is roll 2, and again I didn't see very much distortion in the negative, so I didn't really know what to expect. I think there is more distortion in the images that show distortion, but overall across the whole roll it's actually very usable, and even in some cases more normal than roll 1, which I was really surprised at. However, of course, there are some images, as I say, that showed severe distortion, such as this one here. I have just become an ambassador for the guys who have created Front Photography. It's going to be a website where photographers can sell their prints worldwide. I will actually be listing some of these prints for sale on that once it goes live. It's still in the process of being created. I will share more information as we get closer to their launch date, but keep your eyes peeled. If you haven't checked out their website or their Instagram feed already, please do. So I think this is the one we've all been waiting for, roll 3. And yes, as we expected, it's the one that shows the most distortion. Even in the negatives, you could see that they were much lighter. I was really excited to see what we got here. I tried a few more experimental things, such as self-portraits. In some cases, you might even say that the images were unusable, but I think that's, again, a very subjective thing to say, because images like this one, I might say are some of my favourites, and yet you might say those are unusable images. Art is in the eye of the art, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So in this roll of film, we can see surges, colour shifts, and even some sort of reflection. When I first looked at this image, it looked a bit like a sunburst, but it was coming from the wrong direction. Looking closer, I thought, actually that looks like sprocket holes, so this must be a reflection of some of the film that it was wrapped near, and there's a second image that has a similar effect on it. So I don't really know how that works. If you understand that, please tell me in the comments, because I have no idea. I also wanted to do a comparison of this roll of film, so I've got one image here and then put it next to a completely normal roll of Kodak Gold. So this is one I shot a few years ago, and I had this both developed and scanned by a local lab, unfortunately not Take It Easy, so it's not a direct comparison. but at the very least it is a completely standard roll of Kodak Gold next to my more quirky version, and you could certainly see differences in those. Now let's do a comparison on the screen of each of the rolls of film. So here we have roll 1, roll 2 and roll 3, and then finally another image from that completely normal roll of Kodak Gold that I mentioned earlier. What are your thoughts? Do you like the effects on it, or do you think that Kodak Gold should be left well alone to be developed completely normally? Please let me know in the comments. Before this began, I thought the more intensely I agitated, or the more aggressively I agitated, the more intense the colour shift, the distortion, the surges, whatever it is, would be, and that I think has been proved. I was actually quite surprised that roll 1 showed colour shifts. Yeah, I wasn't expecting the level of distortion that we got. I thought that maybe that one would have been gentle enough, that maybe it would have been lighter than a normal roll, because I was still agitating more than that developer recommends. There is, for me, a big question around, is this a waste of film? From an environmental stance, is this a waste of film? And I think for some photographers, so say those ones who want sharp, clear images, who are really trying to take technically perfect shots, yes, this would be a waste of film. Whilst I wouldn't use this for every single roll of film, I do think there is a space for this in the experimental photography world. I would really like to shoot some macro flowers, shoot some portraits, and then use this to develop the film and see what we get, because I actually really liked the effect from the portraits that I did of myself. And finally, as with all my videos, I have a funny film photograph to share. This one is from Laura Kennedy. It is of a friend of hers goofing around, and I just think that the laughter and the fun just exudes from the photograph, so I hope you enjoy. If you would like to share your funny film photographs, you can do so either on Instagram using the hashtag or tagging the new Funny Film Photography account, or you can email me at schoolofholly@gmail.com.